Hi, my name is Christine Barclay. I am the owner of BARCLAY Performing Arts and the executive director of the Find Your Voice Foundation. And I just had an awesome interview with Matt on Digging In. We had a blast, and I am so excited for you guys to check this out. I hope you enjoy it.
Christine Barclay.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk to you today because you're very unique.
Thank you.
I mean, in many ways, by the way. Awesome energy.
Thank you.
Had a chance to speak with you for a while, past couple hours, and learn about you. But you are infectious, your energy and your positivity.
Thank you.
What you've done though is you've become a very successful businesswoman, right? You've had ups and downs.
Yeah.
I know we didn't talk about this because I want to surprise you. And I hope I'm right about this, but there's a passion behind your purpose. There's a reason why you do what you do. And you'll tell me if I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yes.
So we know you now. We know that you built this great theater and everything that you're doing. Tell us where this all started.
So BARCLAY Performing Arts opened in 2016, January of 2016. And we just turned 6 last weekend, which is really
Happy
exciting.
Birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, it was exciting.
Cheers.
We had a show. Yeah, it was really fun. So we got to celebrate with everybody we love. And, well, not everybody, certainly, with the world right now, but many people, which was good. This want of mine started when I was a kid. So when I was a kid up in Boston, I grew up in Boston. And when I grew up in a theater music family. My father was a director. My mother was a choreographer. That's how they met, doing a show together. Both of my older brothers currently own businesses in the music and creative arts and theater realm. One based out of Nashville, and Bill is traveling everywhere. He owns Concert Theater Works. So we just grew up in this. And at some point along the way, I knew that I had an equal passion and excitement for the directing, teaching side, like my parents did. Both my parents were also English teachers and speech teachers. And then, but that
was their primary. So they were teachers primarily.
Yes. They were educators primarily. So my mom was the teacher, and then they would, like many schools, you'd have the English teacher, the speech teacher, or the, activities coordinator, then do the show at the school or the show in the community. So my parents both grew up. My grandmother built a theater company, community theater company, the Fairfield Players in Connecticut.
Connecticut, yeah.
Yeah, my family built that. My father and my mother were founding members of 3 different community theater groups around our town in Boston.
While they were teaching?
Yes. So it was very much in New England, especially, I don't know, and I believe not just New England, but the area up there, the community theater is just really loved and respected. Yeah. There's a unique
in Connecticut, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's a unique perspective on community theater in Florida, in South Florida. People seem to like to jump from being educated in the arts immediately to I am now a professional, which is a unique perspective to take. I grew up knowing there were many middle steps to take and learn. And
we live in this area, and it's totally not politically correct to say this, but it's like if your kid's on a baseball team, everybody thinks their kid should be an all-star.
Yeah.
It's like, what, they're not?
There's just
it's a mentality here.
There's a need for, no, you're right. There's something, and I don't really know. I think maybe it had to do with the fact that growing up in Boston and that area, we're closer to New York, or we're closer to, I don't know. Maybe it's just that big dream is far away down here, so you don't quite know the steps to take. I'm not really sure, but I grew up very much in a regional and community theater community. My parents both had full-time jobs. My mom was a teacher, and then she became a very successful realtor. My father was a teacher for 25 years at the high school, before I went to the high school, but at the high school I went to. And he then, after a 25-year career there, decided he wanted a new career. And so he started over in hospitality with Marriott Hotels, and he started as a concierge and worked his way up to being the director of training for managers across the world for Marriott. So he would travel to different hotels and train the managers.
How old were you when that was going on?
At that time, I was a baby. I think he started his career over. Yeah, there was a final farewell for him at his if I remember this correctly, final farewell for him at the high school right when I was tiny. I was like a toddler. And then he started that over. And because he always talked about how much hotels were like theaters, where there's the backstage.
Oh my God, what a comparison.
Yeah, there was like the backstage, the management, you never see the housekeeping carts and what goes on in the underworld. And when you come out, you're on stage. You're supposed to be giving these people what they want. And so I grew up very much immersed in the land of speech, education, hospitality, always having a job, making sure you're respecting what it means to work. I was very well loved and supported by my family, but they made sure as soon as I turned 14, I was working, and I haven't stopped since. And, but during that time, through all of these different things I was watching and witnessing in my family and in my community, I clearly adopted some of that. I always loved working with kids. I started babysitting when I was like 10, which I don't know why anyone let me do that, but
think about that.
I was like 10.
That was a different time.
Oh, exactly. No, it was. It totally was. But and they were all safe.
Yeah, of course they were.
But during that time, I realized I had an equal passion for performing as well as directing and teaching, and I had grown up in that environment, so it felt very comfortable to me. So I went to college. For many years before I went to college, I went and built drama programs at local elementary schools. So when I was in middle school, I went to local elementary schools and started building up different drama programs.
Like as a volunteer?
Yeah, just like a middle school kid, just trying to, I don't know, I cared. I wanted to have something to, I don't know. I was always busy. I don't know why, but it spoke to me. I'm trying to think in middle school.
You know why?
I know, because I loved it, but I don't know how in retrospect, I don't know how. Like, did I call the principals? Like, I don't remember. You're
crazy. Resourceful.
Yeah.
You are resourceful.
I think that's true. And somehow,
you just got done telling me that your parents are working full-time jobs, but at the same time that they're running these shows and they're doing all this. It's volunteer.
Yeah.
Of course, you're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
You
right?
literally you're watching them do it, and you don't. It's like.
Fully.
Like, what else would you do?
You're right. And I think I never grew up in an environment. We had a very strong sense of family. My parents were divorced when I was 4, but they stayed best friends. So I grew up in a very unique and loving situation where I didn't have to deal with the dissonance of my parents being separated. I'm sure there were times, I'm sure, when I was really little at the beginning, but I was so young. Yeah. I don't have memory of that.
So you didn't carry away any kind of like trauma or like.
Not at all.
Yeah. No. That's really uncommon. You're very lucky.
So I was very, very lucky. My parents, were incredibly important to me. Never had any issues with them at all. And when I went to look at colleges at first, because everyone expected me to be we're going to go right to Broadway, of my school. I was the loudest
you were the one.
Theater mouth.
Right.
So everyone expected me to just do that track. And
can you sing as well?
Yes, I teach many voice lessons a week. It's another part of my job. So
interesting.
Yeah. So I got to a.
I can hear in your voice actually. A tone comes through when you're talking. Yeah.
I try really hard to support myself because otherwise I will lose my voice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Singing has been a major part of my life. So I got to a point when I was looking at colleges where I thought I should be doing all of the conservatory track. And I went through a tumultuous breakup with my high school boyfriend during the time of my college auditions. Right. And so I lost a little bit of focus on preparing myself, which in retrospect was the best thing that could have happened. Because what ended up happening is, because I wasn't just so focused on that, because I was emotionally licking my own wounds, I ended up canceling a couple of my college tours for that weekend and rescheduling, and I went to Muhlenberg College, which did not have a conservatory program. It is at that year that I applied, it was the top college theater program in the country. Not conservatory. But
explain what that means to anybody who doesn't know.
So it's Muhlenberg College is a liberal arts college. So I had friends double majoring in theater and pre-med, or poli-sci and dance. Like, you didn't have to just be in musical theater, and that's all you were going to do for 4 years. You could do both. So when I went to Muhlenberg and I saw I had a choreographer growing up that I adored, and she went there. So I was, and as soon as my father, my mother, and I drove onto the campus, my father, I remember, said, "This has Christine Barclay written all over it."
Okay.
And I just fell in love with the school. I fell in love with it. It was dime-sized and adorable and perfect for me. I felt like I could see myself building something there and creating myself there. And anyway, so I basically just didn't care.
Wait, did you explain what a conservatory is?
Oh, no, I didn't. Thank you. I explained what Muhlenberg was. Okay. Conservatory program is where you get accepted in. It's a small group of kids. It's about usually anywhere between 10 and 20, usually, kids that get accepted to this program. And you're just cranking out theater talents and theater skills and theater knowledge. And that's fabulous. That's great, because then you walk out.
That's all you're doing. That's your purpose there.
Yes, absolutely.
So they had that.
And no, Muhlenberg didn't have that. But I am, for anyone who wants that, that's great. I'm not downing on conservatory programs. But what I appreciated about Muhlenberg was that it was listed as the #1 college theater program in the country, which meant it had an incredible theater program in the liberal arts college. I didn't have to just kind of surrender myself to just doing musical theater or this track. I could be an educated human in other ways as well.
Yeah, it's just diversified, and you're experiencing different things that might interest you.
Right. And so between that and loving the campus, I was like, this is what I want to do.
It's a great location.
So, and it was fabulous. It was in Allentown. I came to the city. So luckily, I had a great childhood, great everything, worked my butt off, always worked, always performed, always did everything.
Right.
Got into Muhlenberg College early decision, which was great.
They love people like you.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm
colleges,
done.
like that background. Yeah.
I was like,
you're in.
Cool, I'm done.
Did you have good grades?
The rest of my senior year, I had decent grades, but you know what? Here's what I always tell my students and what my parents, I really appreciate about my parents. My parents never made me be a straight A student. That wasn't what they were focused on. They were focused on making sure that I would be successful and that I was going to be able to be happy as a person, but also all around successful. So they let me every day after school. I was in dance classes, oboe lessons, flute lessons, community theater. Oh yeah. Got to tour Europe playing the oboe. That was exciting. I was in an orchestra.
We'll come back to that. No,
that'll be like the music podcast. Okay. So I had every day after school, I had something going on.
Can you play guitar?
No, but my brothers do. So there you go. But I just got to a point where I felt like my parents and I understood that I wasn't a lowlife. They knew.
Mutual understanding.
Yeah,
okay, we're good.
And they knew that I was caring, I was working, I was babysitting, I was working hard. I wasn't, I never did anything wrong. I was never the kid in trouble. I was never the kid at a party. I just wasn't the kid. So we kind of made an understanding between us that like A's were always great. B's were fine. B's are fine.
If just do your best.
If we get a C, it's like, Christine. And anything below that, it's like, okay, no, you're smart. Like, so like what's going on? Why? Like that's just, you didn't do work. But that didn't happen. So I would say I was an A and B student. And I'm very happy and comfortable with that because I didn't focus and lock myself in a tower to make sure that I got the 99.9%, and my parents were okay with that. If I got the A-, but I had a fabulous, successful performance in dance classes 2 weeks before, that's fine,
Not to diminish grades, but it's more important that is what happened because in life, that's more important. The grades are long, long gone.
Yep.
But the way you think and what your beliefs are and the way you even talk to your kids.
Yeah.
As you saw your parents as a role model, that you carry with you, I'm sure. So whatever, you got a B, a C, it doesn't matter.
No. And I wasn't
School's important, but that doesn't really matter.
No, and I wasn't delinquent, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's
they never caught you.
No. Yeah. No, and I never had to be, I was honest about myself and where I was at. And
right.
Teachers were too, but I also was realistic about what my goals were. And as a theater person, no one really cares if you got a B or an A-. They care how you perform in your audition and your show.
That's right. And you were consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
So
now you're in college.
So now I'm in college. So at a certain point when I got into Muhlenberg, I was very happy. And that's where I kind of said to everyone I went to a very smart public high school where the kids all went to, Ivy Leagues. And I was like, I'm going to Muhlenberg. I was so happy. And it was an incredible, incredible choice, incredible college. And so I went to Muhlenberg and I I majored in theater. I did a double concentration in performance and direction. And then I was going to double major in dance, but I could dance there without having to do the major, so I kept doing that, so I could do the double concentration. And
you could have danced too.
Yes,
you can do all those things.
I can do all the things.
Oh my God! All right, keep going.
So then I picked up a minor in Eastern Religious Studies.
Interesting.
Actually, so I grew up with my dad singing in church every Sunday. We would sing and cantor together and play folk group mass and do all that. And something about, even I was so involved in my church life, something about it just like didn't, I don't know, the actual experience of the mass wasn't, I guess, serving me. So I did everything. I was confirmed, did everything else. I went to college and they had just announced a new course in what they called Asian Traditions Religious Studies. And I had a religion requirement as part of my core curriculum there. And I just didn't want to take, Catholicism so I figured I would take Asian Traditions Religious Studies, Religions of India was the class. So I did. And then they developed a minor in it. And what was so interesting to me was that besides a spiritual or religious part of it, that all of a sudden it's older, so I started connecting dots. From a theater perspective, and a performance perspective, the cultures and communities in the eastern part of the world are so based in celebratory performances, different kinds of theater. They like I did my whole capstone project on the Ramayan, and it's this whole week-long festival of theater and performance and shadow puppetry, telling the tales of, there's so, I don't want to go down it because it'll be too much, but there was so much that kind of, for me, I felt like, well, this is knowledge that I could have as a theater person and it's interesting to me because it connects dots from other things in my life. And I could have this knowledge that probably other theater people may not have necessarily.
That's pretty unique knowledge.
So
yes.
I minored in Eastern Religious Studies and majored in theater, performance, and directing, double concentration.
Okay.
And I focused in dance whenever I could.
Okay.
And so we did that, and I had a great time in college. I had a great experience. I loved Muhlenberg. I loved the work I did there. I loved my friends. But the week that I graduated college, my father died. So I was in this very weird place.
Yeah.
Because I knew from everything I just told you earlier about being in middle school and creating drama clubs and all that, I knew eventually at some point in my life I would want to own my own performing arts school. And I knew that early on. And then my dad passed, and that happened quickly, very quickly.
What happened?
And pancreatic cancer.
Well, my father had the same thing and died too.
So
I was only 12.
Sorry to hear that.
But that happens quickly. Like,
yes.
I think pain starts in the back, and then 3 months later, that's it.
It was like October, dead by May. So that was very difficult. And he came down.
How old was he?
67. And he came down and he saw me in my final performance at Muhlenberg 2 weeks before he died. Drove down with my mom and everything. It was amazing to think he did it. And I was in a performance of The Twilight Zone, where I was playing this old lady who they were trying to knock down her house, and she didn't want to get out of her house. She wouldn't abandon her home while they were trying to take over the whole land and remodel and rebuild. So she was sitting and squatting, wouldn't leave. And when the man finally comes into the house, he extends his hand and says, "Let me help you out." And it turns out that he's the angel of death, and takes her hand, and she transforms into the younger, beautiful version of herself, and they leave the house together. And that was the last show my father saw me in 2 weeks before he passed away. So I graduated college. My dad couldn't be there. He demanded that my Nana, who at the time was 98 years old and survived him, and my uncle and everyone, he told the hospital he wouldn't allow anybody in his hospital room the day of my graduation. So they all might as well come to Pennsylvania. So the walking wounded went to Pennsylvania, and we all sat there together and watched me graduate.
Yeah.
And I packed up my stuff and said goodbye to my friends, which at that point seemed odd. Like that should have been the big moment, you know, the end of college. And I just drove up to Boston and then went through the passing of my father.
Yeah.
And when my father passed, his funeral, my dad was a director, right? So, and I got back to his hospital bed before he passed. He directed his own funeral. So,
what?
Yeah, he told us.
It was all laid out.
Yeah, he told us what he wanted as the processional hymn, what was going to be the exiting hymn, what vocalists he wanted singing what tune during communion, what would be, like, he directed his entire funeral before he died. So I sat there, we took notes, and
it's almost like he was there with you, because, like, in a different way, because you guys are fulfilling what he asked you to do.
Yeah.
Right? And that's uncommon.
Yeah.
Like, who does that?
I say to this
I might have to do that.
I don't think I ever
we're gonna do that.
Filmed a funeral in my life. I never would have wanted to rewatch a funeral, but like this one, I kind of wish I could.
You go out your way.
And so what ended up happening that was unbelievable was that in his passing, about 40 of his past students from over the course of his life, like these are people who were in high school when he taught them. And they're grown men and women that 40 years later, 50 years later, when they heard that my dad went by JB, when they heard he had passed, about 40 of them flew in for the funeral and sang in the choir for his funeral.
Wow.
So including some of my friends from college who drove up and sang in the choir. And so when I got there to the church we had grown up in, and then with the choir and everything, and I was trying to say to everyone, you know, this is what my father wanted you to sing this and you to sing. And everyone's like, I can't do that. I'm going to cry. I was like, this is a man's deathbed. Which like, you're going to do it. Get over it. So, but it was beautiful.
The thing is, as you're explaining this, and it's serious, I'm actually hearing something that is not sad the way you're explaining it.
Not now.
But just the way that, because doing this the way that he wanted it to be done, and people coming and singing songs, it's a celebration.
It was.
That's why I'm kind of smiling and because I'm hearing a celebration, and it feels like it was. That's why it feels good even in a bad way.
And that's why I say, like, who would ever want to rewatch that? But I almost would, because it was such a beautiful. Yeah. And to see the letters that came into the hospital from his students, and to see that people flying the line at the wake, you know, it just me. I always knew my dad was awesome. I still know my mom is awesome. She's turning 70 this Friday. We're very excited. We're gonna it's gonna be great. And she's incredible. But seeing the impact, like visually seeing the impact, the letters coming in, the students coming back, some of the cards, what they wrote in them, it just made me realize the amount. And this was a man who was an English teacher, a speech teacher, a community theater director, you know, and the impact. So that's when I sort of made a decision that I didn't need, if it happened, it could happen, but I didn't need I can be a star on Broadway hiatus. I felt at that point that there were a lot of my friends graduating who did not have the passion of teaching and directing, or the skills necessarily. And so that why not sort of leave that performance road to the people who that's what they are and have. And I just started to realize in that moment, as I'm reading these cards and seeing these people, that there was this more in me than just being able to just pound the pavement and show up and audition. So, and not that I gave that away, but I started to realize in that moment that I was ready. I'm like, there's something else I'm meant to do here. This is bigger. And his legacy, it became my personal need to make sure that I carried it. My Nana had survived him, which I felt to be incredibly unfair for a 98-year-old woman to have to bury a child. I think was unfair for the universe. So I felt also an incredibly strong need to make sure she knew that I was working very hard to honor them. So I did. So I was instead of doing what I wanted to do, which everyone after college, right? We all want to backpack across the world and pet elephants and live in hostels. And that was my plan with my best friend after college. I was going to try to travel and teach English through theater and do that whole thing and then come back. And, but I wasn't going to leave family and my Nana after that. So I just moved right to New York City. And I was there for 5 years. And I had a fabulous experience there. But what's funny is that the first directorial opportunity I got the job because they were hiring an assistant director and a choreographer for a Balinese fairy tale. So what person on their resume that they interviewed had an Eastern religious minor who understood?
There was a reason behind that.
So,
it just took 5 years for it to find you.
So basically, I got to New York. I just graduated. It was in the first year I was in New York. I applied. I saw looking for an assistant director choreographer for an off-Broadway production. And I applied and I went in for the interview and they were like, well, you're the only person that we've talked to who has any awareness of Eastern theater or dance at all. So you're in. So that was my first gig, I guess, in New York.
And you directed
it? Assistant director choreographer.
Okay.
So, and then.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Especially because in New York, like off-Broadway theaters they're not like, you're also like stage managing. Like they're not set up.
Right.
So I laugh at South Florida. I'm like, we're spoiled if you guys like you walk into some theaters in New York that are billed as off Broadway and you're in a basement of a like,
I've seen some of it. Yeah, for sure.
That's you gotta do the dirty.
Like really off Broadway.
You gotta do the dirty.
It's off every way.
It's off everything.
Right.
But no, it was a lot of work. And of course I was waiting tables and I was doing my day job and the whole time. So then I saw an ad for an assistant to the director of the Broadway workshop in New York City. And it was a man named Mark Tuminelli. And so I replied to his ad and I said, I work with kids. He runs a business where he takes the Broadway stars that are on Broadway and does workshops with them. He's right in Manhattan, right in Center Hell's Kitchen and Berkeley Greer Studios. So he needed someone to help facilitate that. And then he directed children's theaters other places. So he needed an assistant. So I applied and I am not good with technology. So I couldn't get my resume to format in the correct way when I was sending it from whatever he wanted. So I said, I'll just deliver it to you by hand. Like, where are you? And at that point he laughed and said, please don't, because he was new at the time and didn't have an office. And he's like, I don't want you showing up to my bedroom. And so he was like, I'll just meet you for coffee. So by my annoying dysfunction, I guess.
That probably worked out perfect.
Yes. We ended up
because he got to be with you and that was that probably, right?
Hired me kind of on the spot and taught me a lot. And Mark is now the #1 performing arts training facility in New York City. He puts every single Andrew Feldman of Dear Evan Hansen, Presley Ryan of Beetlejuice, all the kids on Broadway basically come from Mark. He's now he has a podcast called Little Me Growing Up on Broadway. His business has he's like Mr. Broadway right now. And so I was his first assistant. And so I learned so much from him and his company just kept growing and growing and growing. Somewhere along the way in there, he had taken
pause for a sec. You were his assistant during that startup.
Yes.
What did you see because you met him, he was just starting up.
It was like me when I opened BARCLAY, yeah.
So what did you see what was his name again?
Mark.
About Mark. That you learned there's a secret here. There's something that makes this work.
So
what did you see?
First thing, a couple of the things I didn't understand at the time, I will say. I understand now in retrospect.
Okay.
The things like the business model, because there were certain things I'm like, wait, but these are kids and families and whatever. And that's where my heart was. But I had to learn there's the business side. It's not all squishy and feely. You gotta
make money and keep it.
Yeah, or you can't do what you want to do. And I think that was the hardest thing for me because I never came at my life and my passion from a perspective of wanting money. What I've had to learn. You
haven't mentioned that to me once since I've met you.
So what I've learned though is I can't do what I want to do if I don't have it. So it's like I need it to continue to do the thing that I love and I'm passionate about. But I didn't open this business to make money off kids. That's not
very typical of creative people, by the way. I mean, the money's not really the point.
Right.
But it's also a necessity and somebody's got to
there's a lot of I don't want.
Don't forget to answer my question.
I know. Well, it's okay. What I know. I know.
Yeah.
There's a lot though. There's a lot of I think wrong reasons people go into children's theater, because they think they can just charge per head and make money. So that wasn't me. So what Mark started to show me was the marrying of the two. Like, he was still passionate and he cared, but he also had a savvy. Like, if these people weren't in or didn't reply, like, there's no refund, I'm keeping your, it's like there was certain levels of, but he was so loving. It was like the first time I really saw someone who was business savvy, but also gregarious and kind and charismatic, and everyone was, and honest. And I felt that he actually really cared. So it's like, wow, but how is this man, I knew that he had just started the company. I knew that. So like, how is he renting out Ripley Greer rehearsal space? How is he paying these Broadway stars? How is he directing at these places? Like, how? He just started. I'm his first assistant. Like, how is he doing it?
Yeah.
And really what it was is that this man had I believe, put his focus on what he was going to do. And he just didn't ever stop. He didn't, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't in his house with him and his husband at the difficult nights talking about it, but he didn't, it was just like a train that kept going to this day. It just he never stopped. And it looked fully glossed from the beginning, like all of his graphics. Like, no point do I remember, like, I just remember being so excited to be a part of it from the beginning. And I was his first assistant. So he just had such a clear
what is that
vision.
though?
I don't know what that is.
Because I'm hearing I think that's what I'm hearing is really what it is. I mean, he's persistent. So you got to be persistent in business, but to get everybody to want to work with them, and like there's some energy probably being around.
Oh, it's energy. That's what I'm hearing. Absolutely, he's the kind of person
like he's like attractive. Like you want to be in his presence, right?
Yeah, but on top of it, he can be hilarious. He can be a quippy guy. He's just something about Mark is like I guess maybe the phrase "trim the fat" makes sense. He's very direct. He's with you. He fires. He's on it. He's organized. He's connected. He knows people. So, for example, one of the times that he asked me to do something for him, we were moderating a national tour audition call. That wasn't part of his business, right? Like, he doesn't run national tours like that. But someone knew he would be able to show up, with him, Mark and his team, he would be responsible, reliable, so he brought me in to be the person to work that. So I think, like maybe just never turning down the opportunity for that connection, never thinking that something isn't.
I was waiting for you to say, I'm hearing connection.
Yeah, like not waiting. Like I do. I remember I got to go to an opening night of a Broadway show party with him, on a rooftop. And that was as important for us to go to, as anything else. And
it's the relationships. Like I'm hearing the guy can build relationships.
Yes.
And connect. Okay.
Yep. So that was like my first,
that's
between
priceless.
those two first New York experiences from the off-Broadway show that merited my weird minor in college. And from that being me being aggressive and honoring myself and trying to get the appointment with him and then riding with him through what he did. I think I just realized that was just the direction I was ready to go in.
So you saw these things. I mean, geez, look at all these words I'm writing down. This is crazy. I'm hearing you have a lot at once. Reliability. There's the hard work, the persistence, the positive attitude that I'm seeing in you.
Thanks.
What I'm hearing about him is that people trusted him and they had confidence. The guy's a salesman. He doesn't even realize it because trust and confidence is what allows somebody to buy something from somebody.
Absolutely.
So it's not like mysterious that people gave him money.
No.
But he also was empathetic and he wasn't, he had integrity.
Absolutely.
Everything I just read off so far, I believe describes you as well.
Well, thank you.
Do you agree with that?
I would like to think so, yes.
Don't be humble.
I think so.
Be humble later, but not, be honest right now.
Yeah.
That's you.
I work my ass off. I do.
Yeah.
And I love what I do. But at this point, my dad taught me and Marriott management training taught me, and my mom, the way she runs her real estate organization taught me, the upside down pyramid, right? So I'm the bottom. I lead from the bottom. So I support my team. I try to give them what it is they need. And that's not always possible, right? I mean, you're a businessman. Like there are times you got to flip, be like, guess what? I'm the boss. And it's not always possible. It's not a fairy tale, but it's balance. And I think that's what it's for me. And watching Mark, it was a similar way. It was like, I'm building this whole thing above me, and it's just much bigger. At the end of the day, it really is one person. Like, it is Mark, but Barclay is me. But that's not what I want to be leading with. What I want to be leading with is this concept and this. So what I learned.
The culture, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's not just you because you own the business or Mark owned the business. It's you because your personality and your belief system it really is you. All of our businesses are really us.
Yes.
So it's important that our beliefs are there.
Absolutely. So I got, and that was with Mark. Like, there were times I was new to New York City and I was trying to figure out my life. So there were times I was not the most reliable. I was reliable to him, but I was learning. I was still figuring it out. I had to learn. He put me in my place a couple times lovingly and in the right way, whether it's timeliness or whether it was like professionalism. Or
did you soak that in and like learn it?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I owe so much to the people that I've worked for growing up, because I'm a lover, and I'm a creative, and I'm a feeler, and I'm a social butterfly, and I'm a dreamer, and sometimes you do
entrepreneur.
I'm an entrepreneur, and I needed people along my way to look me in the eye lovingly and say, you have so much potential. You need to get your shit together, and be like, not be offended by that. There was one moment I remember I was opening Starbucks in Herald Square at 5 o'clock in the morning, managing Starbucks. And then I was running after my Starbucks shift was over.
You're working at Starbucks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
skip
shift
that,
manager.
like minor detail.
Well,
okay. While you're working in this, with
all
Mark?
These things.
Okay.
So then I was also cocktailing at the Marriott Marquis at the same time. So I was puzzling all this together. So I was running from...
Such a typical story. Like, you're working every possible way to actually keep doing what you love doing.
It's the theater way.
Don't let that get lost here. Like, yeah.
Well, that's what I grew up with up north. And I don't see that
it's normal
always in the southern area of the
very
world.
Nice.
So
you're being really nice.
I try to encourage that with the people I have the opportunity to inspire now, that you have to work first. So I was running from opening Starbucks and Macy's, and then I would be like changing my hat and my uniforms. I'm running to Times Square to make my cocktailing shift. And I just remember I got to the Marriott Marquis, biggest hotel in New York, right? And I'm all excited. We get there, and I'm like, looked at the hostess, Mavelle, who had been there for years. Yeah. She's amazing, fabulous woman. And I just was like, Mavelle, I'm so sorry. I left my wallet. I had to go back, and I left my lid. And she just looked right at me, and she goes, Christine, you are a great kid, and everyone loves you, and you are so talented. But no one cares that you left your keys and had to run around, and no one cares. Fact is, I sat at your table 20 minutes ago and someone else had to pick it up. So you just need to get your ass on the floor, and no one cares. And I was like, oh my God, you're right.
That's the truth.
So I was like, you're right. She's like, all you needed to do is show up and say, I am so sorry. Where do you need me to go?
That's called taking ownership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember that, but she said it with so much love and so much respect for me. Wasn't degrading me, wasn't downplaying me. It was just so beautifully
crafted.
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember it because Mark had said similar things to me like that too. Like, you got to learn the subway system, Christine. If you're going to be in New York, you can't miss the train. Like, so it took people seeing all of what I was and wanted to do and the skills I had, and helping me realize that I can have all of that, but I can't have it if I don't focus and show up and know what piece I'm playing when. And so that then became my biggest growing curve, I would say. I had all the skills for theater, I had all the skills for that, but the business side, how do I make sure I hit my marks on time so I can color around those lines? And with people like Mark, with people like Mavelle, even I will say it most certainly, Randy Singer at the Vocal Black Box, certainly, and Jennifer and Peter Jones at Starstruck Theater in Stewart, which is how I moved to Florida. There were so many lessons that I learned from them in many different ways, from all those people. And at a vulnerable, sensitive, young time of my life, I, was emotional about some of the direction I would get. And I didn't understand it, and now years later that I'm in the seat, I'm 6 years into my business, You can turn around and say, okay, some of those things you didn't handle well, because I'm the business owner and I would handle it differently now.
That's right.
But some of those things, like, no, I'm so glad that you cared enough about me or invested enough in me to teach, not just give me the compliments, but to also give me the hard truth of things. Because
and you heard it.
Yeah.
And again, that's uncommon. And that's a lesson that's coming out of this. Like, you've got to like recognize the opportunities. You got to hear it, like get your ego out of the way. It's not about you. It's about like people trying to help you, and like you realize that.
The ego.
And ego gets in the way.
I think that so in your different interviews you've talked about secrets, right? This is the big goal of how are we here? How can we be successful? How can we live? I think people's
commonalities.
Egos, they're good and bad. You don't want to not have one, because ego can be linked to success and confidence and trust in the things that you were saying, because I have to have a certain sense of myself. But ego is always listed in a negative way. You have such an ego. There are positive and negative egos, like positive and negative stress. There's positive stress.
Very true. Very true.
It's like, I'm stressed. I'm stressed a lot of my life, but I'm also very happy. Like, so it's positive. Right. So there's a level of ego that is I believe serves the person to be proud of their accomplishments, confident in what they're doing, grateful for their opportunities, unaware of the people around them that got, but then there's the part of the ego that clouds the mission of what you're doing. And it becomes, I think, more about, am I the best? Who are my competitors? How, why are they doing that? They copied me all. And that is what I feel like is the toxic trait. And I will say that I never was someone who had an ego, because I just I'm very present when I'm with people. So I try to be, so I'm not like over here a lot. But once I started realizing, which I know we skipped some steps, but once I started realizing when I was going to open my business for sure, the biggest mission for me was, what is my actual mission? Is it about kids, finding your voice, changing the community, like focusing on that? Because if I just focus on that, then I have to shut out the noise from any other business, what everyone else is doing, because I have to know what my competitors are doing, but I don't need to let it throw my boat like off its water, kind of, like I can be aware. I'm like, okay, it's good for me to know what you're doing over there, because business, competition, but I know what I am. Like, I'm confident in what I am. I'm confident in my missions. I'm confident in the difference I'm making. I'm confident in the kind of people I want around me. And so that's where I will say I grew up as someone who always wanted to be liked by people. Just like being liked. Who doesn't like being liked?
Everybody.
And, right? I'm never one of those like, you don't like me, screw you. Like, that's not me. So that's not how I raise my kids. My actual kids and the kids in my studio. I raise people to want and to understand how to get along with people. But I think there is a point where you have to trim that fat and say, no, I have what I have. I know what I have, and my mission is clear, and my eyes are open to the world around me, but my eyes are focused on my destination.
Right.
And it was throughout my time in New York and my time in Florida before I opened Barclay, were massive, massive years of growth for me, as far as understanding how to hold myself accountable, but also how to not let myself doubt what I'm capable of based on criticism from other people or other businesses and things popping up. And I think that's a total journey.
What is that gap?
From New York to now, yeah.
Because there's people think you can do things overnight. And the reason that this is awesome, because and we know we started out by saying we know who you are and what you're doing today, but this entire story, there's a lot that went on, right? So we're talking years and years and years. You can't just jump in and be doing what you're doing. No. Any business is the same thing. How many years total? I would say from the time you actually went to the city until you opened up your business.
I opened up the city. I went to the city.
Mrs. Mayor?
I opened up my life in the city. When I graduated college, and that was 2007, which I can't believe. And so I went, then I was there for 5 years. So fast forward through the mark and those first two jobs, I then just snowballed.
That's valuable.
Absolutely.
So what's that? That time to now, 6 years ago?
That was 20. I mean, I was there in New York for 5 years, and then I worked at Starstruck Theater in Florida for 3.
Okay.
And then I left there to go to Bravo Performing Arts Studio in Boca.
Yeah.
And because they wanted to rebuild their theater program.
Ballpark it for me.
And they,
10 years,
I'm trying to
15
think
years?
like 10, well, what is it? What's now? 2020?
I need a calculator.
Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like 2007 to, you know, like 12 years, 13 years.
That's perfect.
I think I've been here for 13 years in Florida.
Even at whatever the number is, you're in the ballpark.
No,
That's a long time. And anybody that watches this should just keep in mind, it takes time.
Yeah.
And the hard work.
Yeah.
And the commitment.
That's
falling down, like, getting up.
Like, it feels crazy
all
because these
it.
last 2 years feel like such a weird blur of the timeline.
You're
like, how long have you been here? And I'm like,
yeah.
What year is it now? I don't even know where we went.
We lose track, right?
I know that. I'm like,
are the kids in school?
2022 now? I thought I was like, I'm pretty sure I just said it was 2021. It's only 2022. Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't it 2020 right now? We're in 22 now.
It's nuts.
So, it really is.
Yeah, that whole timeline. So I think, you're looking at this. Like, I've been in Florida. I think it's 10 years I've been in Florida. It's a great decade. God, I never thought I'd be staying down here forever, but here I am. So
living the dream, by the way.
I think at this point,
for sure.
So it was about 10. I think the whole scope of it, really, from when I was really knew that I was going to want to make this my trajectory goal, was like a decade. It was like 10 years, and the years before that, I was still straddling the line of like perform, direct. But I knew, as I said, since my dad passed, that I just knew that the end goal was going to be a studio. So.
By the way, that is so when we say passion and purpose, you've got the passion, but I thought early on that was the purpose. I think you confirmed like that's what the purpose really was, to carry on that legacy.
Absolutely.
And it's turned into something that, what has it exceeded your expectations? Like what it's turned into?
Everything. Well, so
Are you surprised? Like, wait, I did this.
No, I am, because when I worked at Starstruck, the reason I moved down there was because Starstruck Theater had built basically something that I figured I would really want to be able to copy the model of and learn the business of at a certain point and go back to Boston, where everyone I know is, and open it there. And then when I moved down and I went to Bravo and I started changing where I was going, that business closed out of nowhere right after they hired me, the business owners. So I all of a sudden had nothing. I had left New York. I had left Starstruck, or had run their whole business. They had a 200-seat theater. I had taken the leap. And then the financial backers of Bravo were like, just kidding. And it was New Year's Eve. And I had just moved my 3 children into a 1-bedroom apartment. I hadn't had my daughter yet. And so I was up 3 kids and down a job, and so I started sending my resume out to everybody in South Florida.
Wait, pause for a second. Was that like one of the lowest points for you?
Yeah.
In this entire journey?
That was very, very, that was very, very difficult, because I thought I had made all the right moves.
So there was self-doubt going on.
Yeah, because there's like all of a sudden.
But it really was nothing to do with you.
I didn't have anything. Like I didn't.
Right. But it wasn't your fault.
No, it wasn't, but at all. But you couldn't in any way. But it makes you think like, should I not have? Should I, you
question
so
your choices.
Said no. And I'm like, am I restarting? And, do I move back? It was just a very weird, I had this forward moving. So
do you believe that when things like that happen?
They happen for a reason?
Is that, is that?
I do. I am a very positive person. I'm also realistic.
Yeah.
But I will say that I believe that everything, it's like bumper car. It's like a pinball machine. It's like you're going to get bumped. And so where you get bumped and what you do with that bump is what's going to help you. So
that's a great analogy.
You could get bumped.
Boom, I'm over here.
Yeah,
all right, where do I go?
Hey, like I'm spinning on the thing now. So it's like.
And you kind of have a little control, and you can, I'll try and go that way. Well, that's a great analogy.
And so now I'm here. So I feel like some people get bumped and that affects them.
They stay bumped. Yeah.
And some people are like, okay. And then,
shake it off. Where am I going
how
now?
It goes. Right. So
that's what you did.
I was in that. That's where I was. Was it hard? Was I scared? Did I feel like all those things. Was I worried because I had 3 children I had moved in with me? And yes, like all of those things. There was my family like, oh my good gracious, what, you moved in these kids, yeah, there were a lot of things, but.
How far before COVID started was that?
That was 2016. The 2015 going into 16, the New Year's Eve going into 16.
Okay.
So what I ended up doing is I sent my resume to like everyone down here and just said, you know, whatever. I ended up having a opening and I don't know, mid-year. It's weird. Like, why are you on New Year's Eve unemployed? So I got a lot of responses back from people who wanted to hire me because New York credits go very well down here in Florida, and that was great. Right. And so I got a lot of opportunity, but everyone was already booked. I mean, we're looking at children's theaters. They were already staffed for the year. It's mid-year. It was the school year had started. Everyone was booked. So I ended up, someone referred me to the BOCA Black Box Theater on Glades, and I went in there for an interview with him, and I had no idea what or how that was. I didn't know. It was this cool, swanky black box that felt like very New Yorkian vibe. And there was this very aggressive, sort of barky, bald man named Randy Singer, who had the business had just opened 5 months prior. And so he needed a manager, a box office manager, another person that he needed someone to help him run the company. And he wanted a summer camp. Right. Because it's South Florida. And so how is he going to fill his theater? And he kept saying to me, he's a businessman. He's not a theater person. He doesn't care. He always talks about he builds himself like a Grinch. And he was like, so all of a sudden I was hit with this very staunch, aggressive businessman who was ready for me to just build him a children's theater. So I, at that point, was like, oh my God, my dream now? Like now? You want me to do it now? He's like, well, what are you going to call it? What's the name of it? How are we going to? And I was like, oh my God, this is like my dream though, dude. Like, I don't know what to call it. Like, I didn't expect it to be now, you know? Like, I thought it would be like years from now. So he quite literally, and whatever has gone.
What an opportunity got handed to you.
High, low, or in between with whatever went on and continues to, with love in any way, go on with the BOCA Black Box and me and that organization. I will never forget the day that Randy stood behind me at the computer in the office and just was like, go to sunbiz.org and just take out, okay, you're going to be an S Corp, just take it out.
Just register a name.
Right. Register that and just do it. Good, you're a business owner.
$150, you're in business.
I literally walked out and I called, my boyfriend at the time, and I was like, I think I own a business. It's like, really? So
he's like, what's it called?
So what do you do? So I was like, and for my dad, it's like, it's BARCLAY Performing Arts in honor of John Barclay. So went with that, and we started that, and it was hard. So you're talking how to build it to now. We started the first summer camp there with 6 kids. 3 of them were my stepchildren.
So they weren't paying.
No.
Right.
And then
they were on grants. Right.
And then the second show we had 8. And we did Schoolhouse Rock Live and Fame with casts of 5 to 8 kids. And I don't know. Somehow from there, little by little, people kept either coming back to me from when Bravo had closed, like they found I had opened up somewhere else, and like little by little, Randy and Larry Burfond and Scott Levine of the BOCA Black Box team were very new in business at that point, and so their schedule wasn't as busy as it is now. So they were at that time very supportive and flexible of using the theater in the space, and that was very cool. I had a key to the theater. It was really great. There was a lot of good stuff there, but there was no money. I wasn't making anything. I was losing money, and that's where I was going home to, my boyfriend and with our kids and trying to figure out how to put that together. And so I was teaching at preschools. I'd be going out all morning and going to preschools and setting up theater programs with 2 to 4 year olds.
You were doing what your parents did.
Exactly. And then I would go and run so we got there. So that's, it's hard when you said how many years did it take me to build it. I've been in Florida since, what did we just decide? 2012. So about 10 years. But my business, I didn't start it and let it organically grow like that. Like it was like a bull coming out the gate. It was like, you're doing it now. And I had no preparation on the business side of my own business. I just had the knowledge from all these other Mark Ginellis and Jack Jones and Brandy's and all these Mavels. And my father and my mom. And so I just slowly started accumulating, as you said, maybe energy, maybe positivity, I don't know. But I just slowly started accumulating a little following, a nice little bite-sized following. And then we took over the studio next door to the theater, which was the size of like this room. And it's like the size of a glorified closet. And we did that and we were there. And we did that until 2 other children's theater facilities closed around me at the same, 2 closed around me at the same time. And it was around the same time, right after the Parkland shooting had happened. And we had a surge of media coverage, we'll say. My production of Spring Awakening had all of the kids who saw all over the news during the Parkland shooting, and the ones on Time magazine, and everyone who made the marches on Washington, Never Again, the girl who wrote the song Shine, everything that was going on. They were all cast in my show before.
They were part of your organization already.
Before that happened.
Okay.
So when the shooting happened, they were all in the school. And so I was giving birth to my daughter because she was around that day. So I had just given birth. And they were coming out of school and we were trying to figure out what to do. And so they decided to stay doing the show, those kids. They didn't cancel it. So we then were juggling me having just given birth and the Parkland shooting and all the kids who were like missing rehearsal because they were at Obama's ball, like gala, flying on a red eye home to do Spring Awakening rehearsal. Or we had to take the week off of rehearsal so they could all run the Never Again March on Washington and sing at it and then come back for their rehearsal. Right.
Beyond surreal.
Very surreal, as I was like nursing
in many, many ways.
So then we had the writers of Spring Awakening, Stephen Sater and Duncan Sheik, caught wind of us doing the show. And it turned out that they had written Spring Awakening in response to the shooting at Columbine.
Oh.
So the whole original Broadway cast of Spring Awakening flew down. Leah Michelle and John Groff and Skylar Aston, everybody flew down and did a open rehearsal with us at the studio. And then Stephen and Duncan came to our production a week later, and they came and it was, it was really surreal because normally you'd be like, oh my gosh, we got media coverage, but it wasn't. There's a documentary that was made about us. They were filming it. So because it was trying to understand. No, it was, but the reason I allowed it, because the schools weren't allowing me to in, the reason I allowed it, first of all, I cleared it with the kids if they were comfortable doing that because they were in the news. They were trying to do all this stuff. And so I just said, this is home though. Like this is an opportunity for them to see what we are, what the feet on the ground, like grassroots project is while you're on Bill Maher and, storming the gates of the Capitol. This is you as a weird theater kid in play rehearsal actually being emotional and sensitive. So that was its own thing. But then right after like that happened and all of that was going on, like within the same year, those 2 other schools closed.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden between the Spring Awakening situation and the other 2 schools closing, I just got this surge of students out of nowhere. And all I still had was that closet.
Oh my God. What'd you do?
We used the boardwalk. It was really, really creative, man. Like we were in the parking lot. We like blocked off room in the parking lot. We were playing our music for our dance rehearsals out of my stage manager's car. So it's like, there was a boardwalk in front of the studio. We were running choreography on the boardwalk. It was crazy. So finally the guys at the Book of Black Box, I think, got annoyed with, I don't know, or they just cared. But eventually they're like, clearly you need space. So then we took over the next studio. So we took over the consignment store. So now we've expanded twice. So then we broke down walls so now this was this larger studio that was next to the theater. So we basically started with the theater, went into the next small space, then expanded through those occurrences into the third space. So now we had like a little complex.
And you were managing the business side of this as well, all throughout this?
And
or was there somebody else helping you at this point? You're still doing it by yourself?
Teaching, directing, choreographing, running the business, handling the invoices, But at that point, when the world exploded, I had all of these fabulous and wonderful college-age kids who had sort of found the theater. So they had been helping me a lot. Showing up, I'd trade them for voice lessons or trade them for, because they're kids in college. They want an opportunity, but they don't have the money. So they found me and we became this little theater family. And I remember the day that I literally called them all in and I said, guys, you all have jobs now. like, and I don't know what the hell they are. We're going to figure it out. We had a whiteboard and I was like, can you do the desk? Are you going to be able to talk to the parents? Like, can you handle who's cleaning the bathrooms? Like, because out of nowhere, it was just, within like a 6-month window, it just went from my self-controlled little group of, okay, will this ever grow? Will it ever make money? Or is it just my little baby? And then it was like, yeah.
And then COVID came.
So we had a creative difference with the owners of the theater, we'll say, at the end of 2019.
Okay. The same guys you've been describing.
Yes.
And you called him what?
He was
something bald guy.
Randy. And Randy is a very unique human. He is a businessman, but he also inside is it's like the Grinch, you know what I mean? He'll laugh if he watches this podcast. Right. You know, the Grinch is he's all barky, but then when the little kid smiles at him, he actually
it's all an act.
Yeah. So, but they're both sides, you know, and at this point, I had developed 2 sides too, because now this was 2019, so I was 3 years into the business. So now I was Mama Bear. I wasn't just the girl who he had convinced to open.
You grew into it.
Yeah.
You grew into
and
it.
I wasn't, because his business was now fully functioning all these years later. And I couldn't run his business for him. So I was like, I'll just run. So now I was running BARCLAY. His business was taking off. My business was taking off.
You were still doing his business too?
Helping for a while.
Oh, I just assumed you dropped that off along the way.
Started to parcel out after I gave birth to my daughter. But I was, up until I was about 7 months pregnant. Yeah, I was performing. Wow. I directed vagina monologues for him and performed in it pregnant. I was like 5 months pregnant.
Oh my God.
So at that certain point, it just got to be a point where unfortunately for him and for me, I guess, it wasn't just he wasn't the boss anymore, I guess. You know,
the energy changed between you. I mean, you changed dramatically.
I had other people to protect at this point. I had just gone through a hell of a lot of trauma with all my Spring Awakening students and everything that I'd been protecting them. I mean, these kids were getting death threats and we had to have metal detectors at the show in case people tried to come in and do something. I mean, it was so I became hyper Mama Bear, protecting my team and my community. And he was focused on his venue, comedy club, music venue, and the business. And we just disagreed on what kind of performances should be able to be going on there. And so I decided to not re-sign a lease there for 2020. We fundraised and we moved about 3 blocks up the street to a studio next to a TJ Maxx. And we moved in there at 2020 and January 2020, January 1st. And we signed a contract with BAK Performing Arts Theater. So we went from a 200-seat black box with no wings or anything like that to a 650-seat theater with every professional, whatever. And we had about 6 shows slated to go up there. And we did our February professional production of She Loves Me. Great. We did our outdoor production of Romeo and Juliet in March. And the day Romeo and Juliet closed, the world closed.
That was it right there.
And a week later, I was supposed to mount at BYE La Cajo Fall with our professional cast and a live band. I was supposed to mount West Side Story with our teens a week later. I was supposed to mount BYE BYE Birdie with our tweens a week after that. And I was supposed to mount Jungle Book Kids with our kids a week after that. All stopped production. Ticket sales already sold. Rental material given.
What did you do? Money goes back.
No, I couldn't. There was no way. It was already in the ticketing sales and every theater dealt with it. So I basically took a video of myself just being completely honest with all my families. And I just said, you know, we have absolutely no idea what we're going to do next, but we just got out of a previous difficult situation. So I'm going to get 2 previous difficult situations from the whole shooting into moving. I said, and I'm going to get us through this one too, but I to be honest, I have no idea how yet. So if everyone could just please be patient and, you know, and I was very transparent. I said, you know, if I had to give back every ticket sale right now, if I have to give back every, you know, we're going to close. So as a community, I'm just going to be honest and say, if that's what you need your price, your tickets back or your whatever, then I understand and we'll work it out. But if we could all work together on this and know that I'm going to be here for the community, I just need a minute to figure it all out. For the most part, people were really supportive of that. I mean, I just sat there and filmed myself in all my upset glory. I was just like really real about it. People were pretty supportive, or they just left me alone. They're like, oh God, she's going through it. So that's when we decided we're going to go virtual. So we were one of the first theater companies really anywhere, to my knowledge, that stayed as aggressively training and executing as we did. My stepchildren were on Zoom for their school classes, and I just felt like this wasn't being done right. These kids were scared. They were losing so much of their life, and they're getting on their Zoom screen, and their teacher is like halfway looks in bed, or looks like they're in their dark garage, or like their cat's like crawling by them. And I'm like, what is happening? And so I talked to my team. We had to trim a lot of our staff, went down to just about 3 of us. And I just said, we're going to be the source of light. This is how we're going to get through this. This is the take. This is what we're going to do. We're just going to be the most joyful thing that these people see on a screen ever. And so we just started, we went on Zoom. We started having, we had a screen manager to make sure the kids could get it was like a full setup. We built walls in the studio so that the sound wouldn't travel between filming. We bought film lights. We bought new devices. We bought at a very reasonable rate because I was like careful, but you could see the quality of which camera we're using in any take. We started doing these nightly chats in the studio talking about what's up. We started doing birthday shout outs, live streams. We kept rehearsing all of our shows. We rehearsed them all on Zoom all the way until the end of the year. We ended the year with a 24-hour live stream, or for 24 hours. We started at noon to noon. We did our recitals. We had about 50 voice lesson students a week. So we had about 50 students who sang all their songs live streamed in. We ended up doing, I brought in Mark Tuminelli. So the first thing I did when the pandemic hit actually is I called Mark. And Mark was like, holy crap, I'm so happy to hear from you. This is crazy. Well, I caught him right before he and his team got on their virtual pandemic wave. So he had a minute for me. So he did a workshop with us. He did a workshop with Presley Ryan, who is just Lydia and Beetlejuice on Broadway, and my students. And we Zoomed them in, and he did a whole conference with us. And so we launched our virtual life with bringing Broadway to Boca, with Mark Tuminelli and Presley Ryan and Beetlejuice. And I had Mark. So now Mark and I reconnected, and so then during the 24-hour live stream, Mark streamed in and talked about life in New York and life on Broadway right now, and how to keep training and things that kids can do during this pandemic to stay fresh with their skills. And so connected my kids to him. So that became very full circle. And then I brought in friends of mine from Boston, and my best friend from New York made a cover of Somewhere from West Side Story, and we played it in honor of our show not going up. And we just started all of these different things. My past student Talia was Elphaba on the national tour of Wicked. She did a workshop with us on Zoom. So we just started creating.
And people were really taking it in. I mean, it sounds like it was.
Yeah, I mean, we did 24 straight hours of that. That was really awesome. I even had my friend from LA live streaming in to cook breakfast for everyone as culinary arts. So it was cool. What I will say is that I didn't know after that the best thing to do, because the world then, we had that fake It's All Over in like June, where we kind of thought everyone could like come back and do their thing. And so we opened up summer camp, and it was my fifth summer. And so I said, I'll do the same shows we did the first year when I only had 5 kids, Schoolhouse Rock and Fame, and show how big my program grew. Well, it was the pandemic. So I did Schoolhouse Rock and Fame again with cast of 5 people. And we got all the students
all over.
And I was like, okay, so here it is. And we taped out 6x6 foot boxes on our studio floor, and everyone was in face shields, and we live streamed it. And I basically blocked it like chess. If he moved to this box, this kid moved to this box, and so every kid stayed 6 feet away from each other the entire show. And then they danced in their 6x6 foot boxes. My choreographer blocked everything in cubes, and we streamed it. So we did that for the first summer, and then Tell
me about the audiences that you were getting with the streaming, though. Like, were you getting like nice audiences?
It's always really hard to tell. What I will say is it was kids, so their families all tuned in. If it was pros, you never know. Adults, no one. But the kids, we did. Well, at this point, what I'll say is that the licensing companies had not caught up yet to their new model. So I didn't have, for Schoolhouse Rock, I didn't have the ability to like count. I didn't know how to count the viewers because we were streaming on YouTube.
But you have a gut feeling, because so many kids were lost during that time. They were like having, it's like.
What I know during the 24-hour live streamings, we had hundreds of viewers because it was just all these kids, hundreds of viewers. When we did,
that was our only outlet.
Oh yeah,
that's where I'm going with this.
That was on. Oh yeah, and whenever we did our talk shows, whenever we released videos, whenever we did spy backs, tons of viewers. Yeah. When we did the shows, it's just the families. You know, you have 8 kids doing Fame. But what I will say is, for those shows, I think the curiosity. We had higher viewing rates earlier on when our quality was less fabulous, because I think people were so curious. Once the whole world started live streaming stuff, and everyone started, catching up, there was less of a, oh my God, Barclay. But in that window, we were the outlet. So we did have a lot of viewers.
And people needed that.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what we started to do is, once that summer ended, we realized that the world wasn't going to go back. So we had a group of kids that needed, behaviorally, mentally, needed to be in the studio. And the parents were like, we'd rather send them there and risk the physical of it because the mental and emotional is more scary to us. And it was. It was horrible what the kids were going through during this time. And so what we did was we decided we didn't want the kids who were all staying quarantined virtual to feel like their own separate place from the kids who were in the studio. I didn't want to divide my company. So we developed this dual platform show program where my music director, Ed, who had been my music director, he's also an IT guy, he's really good with tech, flipped his script from just music directing and did all this research and figured out how to take a Zoom call and cut the windows out of the Zoom, cut the boxes out of the place on the Zoom call screen and filter them through another software to the other software programming we were using. So we had one camera in the studio. We're filming the studio, live stream, right? And then a kid would talk to the camera like it's like when we did Descendants, like the girl playing Mal would turn to the camera to talk to Maleficent, her mom. And Maleficent's Zoom box would appear over our in-studio screen.
Yeah.
So now Maleficent is at home in her bedroom in full costume talking to her camera, and the kid in the studio is talking to the camera. And so it appears through the Zoom boxes that they're working together. So what our tech people, and this incredible young man who did about 250 hours of volunteer work for me, is an amazing video and film editor. He took all the Zoom footage that we sent and he would crop it all out with Ed, and they would place it in like all different. So we did Peter Pan, and Peter would like magically jump in front of a green screen, and Wendy would appear above him, and she looked like she was flying. So we started doing this really cool dual platform hybrid programming that I don't believe has been done really anywhere.
That's what I'm thinking as you're talking. Who's doing that?
Yeah, I don't think so. Ed said he only found out how to cut a Zoom box out of a Zoom screen from a theater company in Hawaii. He said is where he read. So my brother, my middle brother, Bell, I'm the baby. Bell is a little older than me. He was over at the Globe Theater at the time. He was running the music department at Shakespeare's Globe Theater in London. And the Globe shut down. So he's calling me like, what is your crazy self doing over there in Florida? Like, we shut down. So, my brother Jay owns Nashville Yacht Club, which is an amazing traveling musician, fabulous performers, and a traveling band. And they weren't gigging, so my whole family's looking at me like, how are you still so busy? And I was busier than I ever had been, because film work, editing, storage, you lose it. You have to reshoot it. The sound didn't come. You're in this world with me. So it was, but for theater people, that was a whole learning curve. And I just wasn't, so it was a lot. So we got through that somehow. I don't really know how. And the world started reopening a little bit at the end of last year. And that's when we said people were done with Zoom. They were like, we're not doing it anymore. But the world isn't fully reopened. And I don't have as much money as I would have had none of that happened, because I went from casts of 30, but how many 6x6 foot boxes are in my room? 12. So my income is,
of course, dropping. Of course.
So I'm like, what do I do? I can't go back into this 600 seat theater. I don't have those funds that we had. I can't.
Yeah.
So the courtyard in front of my new studio there's a TJ Maxx, an Italian restaurant, and then some really nice store. We're in the middle of the courtyard. So we built an outdoor theater. So we have.
You are the bumper car.
So now
we'll go here.
We started that recital at the end of the spring. We built an outdoor theater, and it's been fabulous. My team is amazing. My manager, Jason Pierre, I don't even know how he does what he does, but he's incredible. And he loads out, we bought lights. And so we've done, I think, 8 shows at this point. We did Little Mermaid out there, the whole Broadway, full-length Broadway show. And we did it out there, and we had about 215 people in the courtyard watching it.
No kidding.
So we just did Carousel and concert out there last weekend.
Do you broadcast that
free.
still though? You still
it
still
depends
stream
on the
that?
licensing, because now the licensing companies now they've caught up with the pandemic. So some you have live stream rights, some you don't. Some you have to pay a lot, some don't. It just sort of depends. So we haven't been streaming it as much just because we're trying to
figure it out still.
Also, like live streaming, unless you're geared on the camera angle, it look really bad quality.
Well, that's
so you
true.
gotta have, inside when it was film and quiet. So anyway, so we've done a bunch of shows. So we are out in the outdoor theater, and that's been really a saving grace. I partnered with the restaurant next to us in the ice cream place. And so when we do events, it's this beautiful community event. You come out, it's dominantly free or cheap, and there's, ice cream, pizza deals.
Perfect.
And then in the middle of all of this, I had this dream for years that I had been trying to manifest, that I finally, when I saw what was happening this year, I was like, it's time to do it. So we finally opened our nonprofit, the Find Your Voice Foundation. And that website and all of those fundraisers and everything finally actually launched this past fall. And we've had our first few big fundraisers. And that is I can't do everything I want to do to fix the world and keep the quality of Barclay up. We're known for, Barclay is a home for anyone who needs it. Lost kids, emotional kids, weirdo theater kids, parents who need friends, whatever. But we also are very committed to honest, good theater training. And our kids are good, and our shows are good, and we know what we're doing, and we're good at what we do. And in order to keep that quality, I can't run that and a whole nonprofit and try to save the world and try to get a bus picking kids up from school. And I have to have help. So, and with the funds that dwindled during the pandemic, everyone who does still have money would prefer a tax deductible donation, which makes sense. Which for many, many reasons, I didn't make Barclay itself nonprofit, which could be a whole other conversation, but many, many reasons. So ultimately, I opened the nonprofit as a way to be an umbrella nonprofit for the community. So when the going gets tough, there's a nonprofit there to help. So to give scholarship opportunities to underprivileged kids who might not normally be able to afford it. Goals of ours are to be able to afford a transportation vehicle that would be like a bus to go to the local schools to pick up the kids from the school and bring them to their respective after-school programming for working parents who can't do that.
That's big.
We want to have a space. We want to have a theater and a complex in our community where when a shooting happens or when a pandemic happens, we're fully open, like how shelters open when there's a hurricane. Shelters don't close during a hurricane, they open. So
right.
Every theater business all the way to Broadway, all closed. But I had a studio that we taped out there was space to do stuff. But sometimes the people in charge of those spaces don't have the same intent, I guess, as the people who need those spaces. And so I feel that I'm someone who needs the space and I have the intent. And so our biggest goal of the Find Your Voice Foundation is to open a space in our community that will host reasonable opportunities for businesses like Barclay, businesses like my friend who owns Renegade Theater in Fort Lauderdale, maybe an art therapy service, different drama therapists, a dance company. So instead of renting the stage for $4,000 for your recital, so your families can, maybe the Find Your Voice Foundation owning that space can offer that for $500.
Sure.
Now that dance company can actually survive after the recital. And then maybe there's an art studio that wants to have a gallery night, and you can have a gallery, an art studio. Maybe there's an art therapist with an office in the facility, a space geared to making sure that the cultural and creative landscape of our community sustains, whether it's on a good day, a bad day, or a really ugly day. And that's what I feel like we're missing. So that's what I've been trying to do with Barclay, but I don't have enough of anything. Enough space. I have enough of a lot of things, passion, heart. But I don't have enough space to fulfill that mission. So in order to do that, I need to go to the people in our community that have the available funds still after this pandemic and say, what could we, in retrospect, if this comes again 10, 15 years from now, how do we want to see our community handle it differently? So Barclay could be one of those companies that benefit from that. But at the same time, it also allows me to keep the quality of my baby where I want to keep it and not thrown up to the gods of a nonprofit board that could.
Well, this is like an unbelievable story. The whole thing.
So I don't know. So now I'm here with you. So
and here we are.
So I don't know.
Like from start to finish, like what a journey. Like what a journey.
Yeah, it's weird when I look back on it all because you're asking me the questions. You're like, oh, so this was like in middle school. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I just keep going. So it's nice when I have someone like you who wants me to be like, how?
I'm intrigued. I ran out of paper. We got to wrap it up.
No, I don't know.
I didn't want to stop you because like each part of your story, there's like a different purpose. That's kind of, there's a purpose that's like threading through the entire thing. Right. But there's like each chapter is like a new challenge.
Yes.
And you follow this like sort of instinctual like gut feeling of like, okay, I'm not sure what to do, but it's good. I'll figure it out. And each time you do figure it out.
Yeah, we have.
And you're not really winging it, even though it sounds like it when you're telling the story. You're not winging it. Like you've had good good role models, mentors, and you've seen how to do it. So it's not by chance that this is going
and when you say
the right way for you.
Not winging it. No, there is a part of, I think it's being flexible, and not. Listen, when I graduated college, I had my life and my plans for the next 3 years that could have been carried in a little briefcase with me. I had these 3 years and then my dad died. So that whole briefcase of plans was like, okay, guess not. So what? So that's kind of what I've been following with my life. You can't hold on. You have to have a clear focus. You have to know what you want. You have to have it in you. I don't think if it's not passionate enough, because business sucks, and I'm sorry, I have to use honestly, who wants to deal with the tax certificate or the fire alarm guy coming there's a lot of not fun, pretty parts of the business that people who are going to open a business don't,
awesome.
And that's where a lot of them don't make it because you don't want to jump over those more gratuitous, kind of like humps, but what I know is if I have my focus and my purpose as clear as I have it, which I believe I do, then whatever wave comes, it might change what that looks like, but it's not going to change the final destination, if that makes any sense.
I mean, that's like, we're stopping there. That makes, that's like, that sums everything up so perfectly.
Good. Thank you.
Wow.
Ta-da.
I'm almost like tired. Not from you talking.
I'm tired every day.
You've done so much.
Thanks.
In such a short period of time, really. Like,
honestly, yeah. I mean, 6 years for the business to be here. We have 2 businesses opened that are both functioning successfully, completely legally above board, everything processed there's no shady dealing.
Nobody's coming after you.
No. I mean, because it's hard when you open a new business. You don't know all the rules. I've learned, it takes time to know all those P's and Q's to be able to just put on a play. So it has taken time, but I do appreciate the interest that you have. And I do appreciate that when I do have time to stop and look back, I can say, yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's like, look what I did. Look what I did.
But in the moment, it's how to get to the next step. So
we talked about early on, like what the point of even having the conversation is, like, why are we doing this? And you just did. This is the reason. Somebody's going to be inspired. Somebody's going to be motivated.
I hope so.
I think a lot of people.
I hope so.
And your story, I don't know that everybody knows your story that knows you. Maybe they know bits and pieces. So it's kind of cool.
I'm not from here. So, I didn't grow up with that. So I kind of appeared at this new theater and opened this new company, and everyone's like, "Who the heck?" Yeah.
Well, we just documented a really awesome party, like your story in a short hour and a half, right?
Thank you.
So I want to thank you. This is awesome.
Thanks.
Really, really awesome.
Thanks for being interested because
I'm intrigued. Like you're like a successful businesswoman. like super creative. Like it's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
And you're like just getting started.
Yeah, well, that's the exciting part. And I think if anyone listening, I would say this: you hear how much I just talked about when you asked me earlier, and we're like, "What year is it?" We can't do math. Because it's every drop in that bucket. You know, what is the trajectory? Started when I was, as you said, doing my, everything in your path. If you know, I will say I was lucky enough to find out at a young age what my passion is.
You've got a compass.
And that was lucky for me. But everything else is how I followed it. Yeah.
I think it's uncommon. Like you've got a GPS. It's guiding you no matter what. Like you're still going, you know where you're going.
Yeah.
And so
just making sure I follow that mission, and on the good days, the bad days, the ugly days, remembering it. And that's the best. It's never always going to be easy, and it's never going to be on a good day. You have to just, on the lowest part, you have to say, okay, well, what now? And I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged. That's where a lot of people get discouraged.
Yeah.
But rising from the ashes is as exciting as coming out the gate strong. And we've risen a couple times. So hopefully we'll keep going. So
now you know you can do it.
Yeah.
Over and over and over.
Well, when you get a regular theater back and the whole world's wide open, I'm going to feel like I'm on vacation.
Oh my God. It's going to be too easy. You're not going to know what to do.
Oh, you know me. Let's open a third business.
Before we wrap it up.
Yes.
Look over there.
Yes.
Okay. How can people find you?
So if you're interested in BARCLAY Performing Arts, which has anything to do with anything creative, theater training, a safe space for your children, an after-school activity, if you're a working professional in town, in any kind of way, BARCLAY Performing Arts is a fabulous creative safe haven for you. We've been deemed as a theatrical beehive. We're in West Boca, and you can find us at barclayperformingarts.com or any BARCLAY Performing Arts handle on Instagram, on Facebook, I believe on TikTok. You can, at BARCLAY Performing Arts, you can find us easily. If you're interested in what I was talking about with the Find Your Voice Foundation, the Find Your Voice Foundation you can find at fyvf.org. And right through that website, you can learn about our goals, our missions. You can make a tax-deductible donation. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at the Find Your Voice Foundation. And either or any of those places, however you choose to learn about us or support, will go directly back to cultural and creative landscape changes in our community and developments. And if you want to be a part of a day-to-day thing, go to BARCLAY. If you want to be a part of a bigger dream with a tax-deductible donation, go to fyvf.org.
Support Christine. Support Christine. Support the cause.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this was a great day.
At the end of every show, I look at that camera and say the same thing. And you exemplify this. All right. Be humble, do the work, and hustle, and you can reach your potential. And that's what you've done. That's what you keep doing.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Give me a COVID
shake.
Man.
Nice.